Now a word from our sponsor.
Hi, this is Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of Retail Resilient. Car dealers all over the country love working with us, and let me tell you why. We have two product solutions that they absolutely love using. The first product solution is a Facebook and Instagram school where we build out a curriculum for salespeople and managers. We teach them how to create new car offers, used car offers, and get pre-approved offers. We also have a campaign management program where we generate leads for them, and then they do what they do best, they sell cars. So we train their sales staff on how to handle social media leads. Our car dealers typically say to us, I had the highest grossing month in the history of my business. I'm up double in my volume year over year. We even had a client the other day that told me that he was absolutely blessed because he loved our customer service. Everyone at Retail Resilient works remotely from home. I hire only car people from all over the country, so I hire all A players. They're really good at what they do, and we absolutely love helping car dealers. So give us a try, give us a shout. You know, any opportunity, we would love to see if we're a fit to work with you.
Hi, this is Barry Jordan from whitegloveperformancegroup.com. I'd like to take a few moments of your time to share how we can make you more profitable. Dealerships all over North America are using our cloud-based power dialing platform, Touchpoint, to manage their outbound sales-generating phone calls. With Touchpoint, your agents can make up to 50 calls an hour. Leave a voicemail, send an email with a link to a video or to your website, all with a click of the mouse. We specialize in empowering your teams to make the calls that make the sales. How can Touchpoint help you increase profit? Check us out, whitegloveperformancegroup.com. That's whitegloveperformancegroup.com.
The road to a sale has never been easier. Introducing the 2-day sales process workshop. Whether it's giving your new employees a head start or re-energizing your sales team, everyone can benefit from this relational approach to sales. Attendees will learn to create an outstanding buying experience by aligning the sales process with the buying process and helping customers through the phases of selection, mental ownership, and commitment. With preset performance standards and accountability criteria, we teach the critical skills and behaviors necessary for long-term success, like making unforgettable first impressions to building lasting relationships that result in repeat and referral business. Through lectures, group discussions, PowerPoint presentations, and helpful Q&A sessions, everyone walks away with the knowledge and tools they need to succeed. Included are detailed workbooks with daily routines and framed certificates of accomplishment. Those we've trained have reported closing ratios up to 53.9% and sales volumes up to 235 units per year. Are you ready to maximize your sales team's potential with our 2-day sales process workshop? Contact Automotive Business Solutions today.
Thanks very much. A few books: The Everything Store, Jeff Bezos, Age of Amazon, Reengineering Retail, The Future of Selling, and Resurrecting Retail. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's my job to do the disclaimer and tell you that the views and opinions shared by our guests are not necessarily those of ours, even though we may be in agreement with them.
Thanks, Jeff. And the show is upgrading to digital retail, what all that's about. And in this case, it's actually take two because we did a digital retail show last year. So let's roll right into it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Ian. So today we have some great guests with us. We always have great guests, but we have some new people joining us today from all over the continent. And thanks for everybody for tuning in. But first of all, first guest I'll introduce is Jason Silberberg, who's definitely a veteran of the show. He's the CEO of NABThat in a little tiny suburb of Los Angeles called Los Angeles. Jason, please reintroduce yourself to everybody.
You're still muted, Jason.
Let me take that off mute.
No
CEO of NABThat. We've been around for about 8 years. We build technology for dealerships primarily around engagement and conversion. So we have an award-winning website platform, and an email automation platform.
Terrific. Thanks again for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time. Secondly, new to the show is Rudy. I apologize if I pronounce your last name wrong, but is it Thun or Tun?
Neither.
Neither.
Yeah, I was waiting for what you were going to guess, but tune. Yeah, like name that tune.
Oh, perfect. So Rudy's the COO of Roadster out of San Francisco, but enjoying a little bit of wine today. Rudy, can you please take a moment, introduce yourself, and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the show for the first time, Jeff and Ian. Appreciate it. So Rudy Toon, the COO at Roadster, and I've been in the auto industry for most of my career, going back to Ford Motor Company in the mid-'90s. But most important, I've been doing digital retailing for almost 10 years, going back to a COO stint at Carwoo, and then running eBay Motors vehicles business prior to joining Roadster a little over 6 years ago. And Roadster's been a leading digital retail company for the past 5+ years now. So looking forward to the show. Thanks.
Thank you. So is it true that all the executives of the company have to drive convertibles?
Well, our CEO is very fond of Porsches, so he's the one who went out and spent all the money on the name. He can drive whatever he wants at this point.
Thanks. Next is Claris Kovacs, who's the Director of Product Marketing for Moto Insight out of Toronto, Ontario. Claris, thanks for joining us. Please introduce yourself.
Jeff, Ian, thank you so much for having me on the show again. Director of Product Marketing, Moto Insight Digital Retailing Solution here in Canada. I work very closely with our dealer partners, our customers, as well as the product team, as well as supporting product strategy and roadmap, as well as our dealer success team, to sharing some of the successes and challenges that dealerships are seeing with digital retailing. So thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Scott Peckstein, who's the VP of Business Development at Digital Airstrike. He's in Southern California, somewhere between San Francisco and LA or whatever. But Scott, can you introduce yourself, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me on the show. Like Rudy, started out in automotive in the mid-'90s. Been at it ever since. About 2 years ago, I went over to a company called Digital Airstrike. Headquarters is based out of Scottsdale, and we do digital marketing for dealers around the world. So we've got just a little over 7,500 clients now, both auto and mechanic.
Cool. Great. Thank you. And last but not least is a good friend of the show, Troy Glenn, who's Director of Sales for Western Canada of CDK Global. Troy, can you say hello?
Hey, everybody. Well, thanks for having me back. I'm Troy from CDK. We have a suite of automotive solutions, obviously, that are partnering with dealers for the last almost 50 years now. And I've had the great chance of representing the company for the last 7 or so here in Western Canada.
Fantastic.
Just great. Thanks. Ian, take it away, please.
So last week, our show topic was how to engage and sell more cars with technology. If you missed the show live, you can get the recording anywhere you get recordings, on our website or podcast forums or whatever. And we had a variety of tech experts who shared their vision on how technology can sell cars. Most of our guests shared a similar view that dealers have to upgrade the way they interact with tech right away. What's missing with dealer tech today, and how do you think upgrading dealer solutions will make a difference? Let's start with Rudy.
So yeah, I certainly agree that dealers need to leverage technology more, but I think there's two main impediments that we're dealing with now. And the first is one that we all know well, that change comes hard to this industry, mostly because there hasn't been as much disruption to the retail model as maybe in other industries. And dealers are making so much money right now, especially, that using the older approach is still pretty attractive. So the way the cars have been sold really hasn't changed much. And to put it another way, I think we're still living in an in-store appointment mentality as opposed to what I would call as a remote selling model or mentality. And it's not about e-commerce. It's not about, hey, customers are just going to go ahead and buy a car online. It's more that the sales process can be initiated online by the seller just as much as by the buyer. And that's like a big mind shift that I don't think we've quite gotten to yet. But the amount of efficiency that you can gain by completing most of the transaction prior to the customer actually coming into the showroom is huge. And that's the real big mind shift that we've got to have. And so because change is so hard, we as an industry need to make it a lot easier to change. And we haven't done a great job of that so far. I think the vendor community, the tech community hasn't been able to stitch together all the integrations that make it easy to make this change to remote selling. There's still too many systems to for a dealership to master and re-inputting information all the time. So that's the next step, right? I think that's where we are as an industry. All these different systems, and you can talk about the website, digital retailing, desking, CRM, DMS. All these pieces need to flow together better, so that we make it easier for the dealer to sell, and there's no excuses for the personnel at the store to push back and say this is too hard. In some cases, even sabotage because the previous way has worked well for them for so long. So I think we're kind of at this point where, establishing some real standards around, call it a deal object. What are the different pieces of a deal? Can we come up with a common vernacular on what a deal is, such that all these different systems can talk to each other and transfer the information as a deal is being conducted. I think that's where we are. So the industry sort of owes it to the dealers to get this right. And that's when tech will be fully embraced.
Thanks. Jason, you have thoughts on that?
I think Rudy touched on a lot of points there that are correct. It all comes down to internal, right? It comes down to the internal processes that dealerships have, and you have payment, you have pay plans, you got commission, you got salespeople that are driving their own growth, right? And they're incentivized to do that. And if they don't believe in digital retail, then they're not going to utilize that tool, right? Because at the end of the day, it's going to hurt their bottom line pocket. So it's technology coming together, but it's also the dealership internally having buy-in from everybody involved, right? From the top down, and they need to utilize it. And right now, we see it, right? We got hundreds of dealers across the U.S. that use products like Moto Insight or use Roadster and things like that. And, we get feedback all the time from our dealers when we're looking at data and we're looking at, what is working for them, what isn't, right? Because these are widgets that are built into our environment, right? We're the website company. We're responsible for the conversion and for the metrics that our dealers are looking at. And so we're making sure that any kind of digital retail tool that's being put into a site is helping that dealership, right? Is helping them with communication and engagement and opportunities, right? We love talking about opportunities. And is it helping them or is it hurting them? And at the end of the day, one of the metrics that we always like to look at and our dealers like to look at is what is the closing rate of that traffic that is coming through a quote unquote lead form, right? We'll just call it a website lead form. And what does that traffic look like from a closing rate that's coming through a DR tool, right? Is it better or is it worse, right? Are our team, our salespeople really being able to communicate and engage with that customer and get them into the door? Because at the end of the day, like Rudy said, it's all about appointments, right? Shows, get in. And at the end of the day, like I told you before, the payment plans dictate the actions that the team takes internally. So I think you got to have a lot of buy-in internally to push the DR product to become, from start to finish, right? Online transaction to signing the contract online and delivery of the vehicle, right? Can we get there?
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Clarice?
Yeah, I just kind of agree with both comments from Rudy and Jason as well, that looking at digital retail and that technology is not just another tool. It's a tool to really support a better consumer experience. And I think dealerships, as they adjust, they can make the mistake of breaking that consumer experience. So we may drive high quality traffic into your digital retailing tool, but if the experience is broken, then we haven't really solved the pain point that we set out to solve. So we're looking at ultimately a better dealership workflow, so a more convenient workflow for dealerships with the integrations, building those ecosystems as well as creating a more seamless and intuitive consumer experience. But as it is new to consumers, it's our job to build awareness with like advertising, retargeting, driving customers in there, building awareness around it, but really like sticking by brand promise as well. Like we're offering this differentiated experience, then let's actually deliver on that as well. So I think that would be another key piece that we have to make sure that we solve.
Cool. Scott?
So something that's tough to do that I've got to remind myself over and over the years, put yourself in the customer's shoes. It sounds like a cliche. It's hard for us to do. People like Rudy that have been doing this for 25 years, myself, we've got to step out of our zone, our vendor shoes, our dealer shoes, just step out of the industry. Ask our neighbor, what do you look for when you buy a vehicle, right? Everything Clarice and Rudy talked about, it's also true for the consumer that knows exactly what they want and they're digitally smart and they can walk through the process. But what about the vast majority of the people that aren't comfortable, right? If I wanted to buy a house, I want to buy a house down the street from me. I know how much it costs. Why do I need a realtor? I need a realtor because it's a complicated process. It's not a process I live in every day. And we have to take that into consideration when people buy vehicles. So giving them, it's funny, the title of the session last week was the title of our title of what we presented at NADA, the virtual NADA a couple months ago. And it's allow tech to do the heavy lifting. You lean into tech to empower the consumer to do more online, whether it's the process from A to Z, which a lot of great people have solutions on this call, or maybe they just want to go to A to B or A to M, but give them, you lean into tech, give them the ability to start the process, and they need help more than ever. Just because technology is taken off doesn't mean the consumer doesn't need help. And I think sometimes we forget that.
Great thoughts. Troy?
Scott kind of hit on the head when it's not necessarily about taking the process, throwing it out in the garbage and starting over with a new process. The reality is there's like multiple generations from boomers to whatever you want to call the generation after Gen Z looking to buy cars, and every single person wants to buy them differently. The pandemic's taught us anything. It's been that, maybe I don't want to buy something in store, but I'll do curbside pickup, or I'll do shipping, or instead of shipping in 7 days, I want it in 2 days, or I want it same day. But if I'm a dealer, I really want all the customers that want to buy in multiple different ways. So having a great digital retailing tool is going to help me capture the millennials, the people who don't need the old in-store process. But there's a farmer in Omaha, Nebraska, who's been buying a truck every 3 years on paper with a handshake in the back of his barn from the same guy forever. We're not going to make him go online and buy a car. But at the same time, when you talk to a millennial or Gen Zer and you say, hey, listen, you're going to come into a dealership and we're going to ask you a bunch of questions, then I'm going to pull out a piece of paper and draw a little plus sign on it and write some numbers on there. Well, that's the way I watched my dad and my grandpa buy a car. Why would I do that the same way? I think if we can come up with technology that meets the customer where it helps them buy a car the way they want to buy a car, that's the one that's going to win. And that's what we need to do to adapt.
Fantastic. So thanks for that. Jeff, we got a couple questions from the audience. You want to start with one or?
Sure, I'll start with one from Stephen Granger in that little place called Texas. His comment was that all the tech seems to be being built from the wrong direction. It seems to be coming, well, not to say seen. He said it is built for driving customers into the store. And he says there doesn't seem to be anyone working and focusing how to build a tool from the dealership out. And again, it seems that most of the tech is built as a measuring tool, not really to help the salesperson be better and sell better. And Bob mentioned too that don't you have to have a commitment to process and train to that process? Would somebody like to comment with that, or should I pick somebody? Let's go with Rudy. He hasn't spoken in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I understand the perspective. It's interesting at Roadster, right? We started first as a direct-to-consumer business, so we focused a lot on the consumer journey and built that out. It took us, 2 years to really hone that in. Then we spent really the last probably 3 to 4 years really focusing on dealer tools to make the salespeople's jobs and finance office and everyone else involved, GSM's jobs easier with better workflows. But I think the key for us has always been, right, the end users have to have an easy experience. It's got to be both sides, right? It's got to be the consumer has to be able to navigate this easily. But when they get hung up, the salesperson has to easily be able to jump in and help them. So you ultimately have to solve both pieces. And from Roadster's perspective, like, we're working really hard on both ends of that, but one without the other just doesn't work. So it's a heavy lift, and it's a lot of product. And I think it takes a good 5 to 6 years to build out all the different pieces that are really required to make this work and sing together.
Very good point. Very good point. Before I ask the next question, I have to comment on Troy's mention about the farmer near Omaha, Nebraska. I think now that that his kid's going to be shopping for a car while he's driving the combine down the fields and sitting on his iPad and doing the deal right then and there in his virtual farm. So moving right along. Last week, as you already guessed, we had a digital related show too. And I asked this question last week, and it certainly fits for today's topic as well. How does a dealer legitimately vet all the products and vendors they find interesting? Because there's so many, and to go to Stephen's question too, it's like there's so many things, and a lot of them are sitting in a virtual storeroom, and nobody's touching them. So, Troy, you're sitting there facing me on my screen for some reason. So please, can you address that?
Well, just to sort of bounce off what we were talking about last week, I mean, the technology is a part of it, and a lot of it's evolving at a really rapid pace, and a lot of dealers are uncomfortable with that. So rather than try to say, hey, here's this new technology that if you don't have it, you're going to lose customers, it's really got to be about, what is your market? What part of the market are you missing? And do we have a tool? Is there a solution that helps fix it? If you try to stick a square peg in a round hole just because I need to make a sale, it's not going to help the dealer. I think more than ever, dealers are relying on their 20 groups. They're relying on their peers. And especially when it comes to technology, we're seeing more and more of these sort of dealer collaboration, especially within their own OEM, to really vet some of these things out. And again, some of it's also driven by the OEM. We're seeing a lot of, partnerships and exclusives with OEMs where they're trying to modernize the process, despite the fact that the dealers are sometimes trying to slow it down. So I think it's a little bit of the peer group. I think it's a little bit about trusting your supplier and vendor to make sure that they're actually a partner that's looking out for your best interest and not trying to sell you something. And industry information, do their own research, just like the customers are researching the cars.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Claris, how about your opinion on properly vetting all the products and vendors?
Well, I think you have to go in with the questions like, what pain points are we trying to solve? Like, what are we trying to achieve? And versus that fear of missing out. Now I have to sign up for digital retail, and it's understanding like, what's the focus here? And I can see with most of our successful dealers, they've gone in with the mindset of trying to enhance that customer experience. And looking at digital retailing is not something that's going to replace your processes, but it's going to enhance them, like fill in the gaps where we have them, remove some of those roadblocks. And I think even when let's say a vendor demos the product, it's like asking those right questions, like who's succeeding with it and what are the challenges? Like, how am I going to get there? What's the ongoing support? Because we know there's a process change that's required. So is there somebody there who's going to be available and share some of those best practices with me as well? And I think, Troy, you mentioned too, like with Motor Insight, we have a big focus on our, we call it a tierless solution. So focusing on the consumer journey, even if they come from the OEM side, and having that continuous experience, because right away, if you're a tier 3 customer, it's going to bring you that higher quality prospect that you know the path that they come from and what their intent is and where they're trying to go. So really, it's, to me, it's like, what's your pain points? What are you trying to solve? And who's going to help me and support me to get there if I do sign up with you, basically.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jason, your viewpoint on this.
I mean, I think like any technology, right, that a dealer brings in, that if you don't have buy-in, it's going to be a failure, right? And we talk about the experience, and I can have, from our point of view, right, in my background in mobile technology and working with Fortune 500 companies for 20 years and coming in automotive, you can give a dealer the best tech in the world, but if they don't use it properly, it doesn't help the customer at all, right? And I personally have seen DR tools not being managed at all. And I'm talking about one of the top 10 dealers in the US. And I go in and I'm getting quoted $900 for a Honda Accord because they're not updating their pricing, right? So, there has to be complete buy-in from the GM down or from the dealer principal that, hey, we're going to update pricing. We're going to make sure everything is accurate in here, that if a consumer comes in, they're going to see the correct information. And then you got to throw in, right? You got to throw in OEM mandates, in MAP guidelines and advertising guidelines with regard to pricing. So from a dealership perspective, am I really providing the customer with a transparent offer or pricing when they're looking at a DR tool? No, I'm not, right? Because I haven't got their personal identifiable information yet. And that stops me from a marketing level, from an OEM compliance, to be able to show them the price. So, these are the things that we look at, right? This is why we have trademarks around unlock and unlock your best price and our price, because we do all the heavy lifting, right? We do all the digging. We look at customer behavior and acquisition models, all of it. I mean, like Roadster, we were in the business for a year and a half on doing digital retail in 2013, right? Selling vehicles directly to consumers with dealer buy-in, right? Cost of acquisition was incredibly high. So today, from an industry perspective, right, we need to look at Carvana. We need to say, what is Carvana doing? Every time I see a Carvana license plate, I ask that customer or that person, I'm like, hey, do you mind? Why did you buy a car from them? Right? What was the reason? And I get a gambit of reasons. Why? Oh, they have an easy return policy. Oh, they do all the paperwork for me. I don't have to worry about going to the DMV and doing the bill of sale or whatever it might be, right? The marketing, right? It is that mentality of marketing that carved out Carvana into its own ecosystem that allows them to attract a gambit, right? We're not just talking about Gen X or Z or whatever, or millennials. I mean, they're pulling in a gambit of individuals across a spectrum of age groups. So again, like any tool, right, you have to have dealer buy-in, and they have to be able to, because at the end of the day, they're controlling the experience. No matter what we do, right, as a third party, Roadster, Motor Insight, and how beautiful we build everything, right? If they're not updating the content and not updating the information, then, the output is going to be junk.
That's a really good point, because it doesn't matter how good anything is if the dealer doesn't use it or use it properly. What's the point? Scott, your position on how a dealer can properly vet the products?
Yeah, I like Jason's answer. You need that internal buy-in. I agree with everything he said. In addition, you need external buy-in. So when I've run sales teams over the last 2 decades, and it took me a while to figure this out. But the most important question I can ask during an interview is, I'll stop the interview and I'll say, really quick, how long have you been in auto? 8 years, got it. Name me 5 people, 5 general managers, GSMs, give me their names and their phone numbers right now. And when I call them, what would they say about you? And that has turned into the most important question. By the end of their answering that question, either the interview quickly ends, or I know this is going to be a superstar and I hire he or her. Why don't dealers do that? Right? When I introduced myself in the company, I'd mentioned to everybody that we have over 7,700 dealers on the program worldwide. If a dealer were to do business with me, or thinking about doing business with me, why wouldn't they lean on that? And I'm not saying call the poster child, right, that's in all the automotive news ads and that's been singing praises for your company. Name 5 or 6, Mr. Vendor, Mrs. Vendor, give me 5 or 6 dealers in my area, out of my area, same brand, not brand, and call them. And even when I volunteer clients for prospects to call, they still don't call them. I think that's the little tiny extra step dealers can take to hear it from their competitors, dealers in their 20 groups. I think Rudy mentioned it earlier. Most people don't do this during the interview process. A lot of people don't do this when they're dating. I've been married since 2006. I don't know what it's like to date nowadays, but everything's public, right? You look at a girl or a guy, whatever your preference is, you see what their friends are on Facebook. If you happen to have some mutual friends, pick up the phone and call them. Hey, what's this person like? Why do I have to start from square one with a girl or a guy, along the same token? Why start fresh with the vendor when you've got 8,000 dealers already doing business with that vendor? So referrals is the answer, or references is the answer to your question.
That's outstanding. A very good point. Digital's such a new thing, and wow, but references are good old school. Is how good salespeople used to sell cars, word of mouth. Rudy, I'll let you close this question out.
Yeah.
Your opinion on vetting products and vendors.
Totally agree with the other panelists here, but I'll emphasize what Clara said about really understanding what your business goals are going into this. Like, you have to have a sense for what you're trying to solve for, whether it's a better consumer experience, whether you're trying to make your sales process more efficient so you can sell 19 cars per person instead of 10, or whatever your goal is. Really have a good sense of that going into it. One thing that hasn't been mentioned yet in this process is who's really driving it. And oftentimes, like, there's a mandate from a dealer principal. Hey, I really want to get into digital retailing. They don't necessarily sell it throughout the store and all the different people that are going to be using the product that well. And you get started and you have these kind of false starts and changing vendors, swapping them out regularly. I've been down this road with many dealerships where it's not clear what they're trying to accomplish. So, once you know that, then you really need to make sure there's a clear champion. And this is the piece that I don't think has been discussed that much. Having a digital retail champion at the store that's going to be responsible, that has the political capital to drive change, that's going to be supported by the dealer principal every step of the way, is the most important thing to driving success. And that could be the dealer principal themselves. They usually don't have the time. Do not underestimate how much goes into really making this transformation. It's a lot of work. And so whomever that is, it's a dedicated job. I've written a job description. It's on the Roadster website. It's something I did 3-4 years ago. Here's what the job is. And if you don't have this person, good luck. It's going to be really hard.
Thank you very much. Ian, I'm going to turn it over to you for the questions, but I do have to respond to Stephen's comment about dating is terrible.
We also had a question from Bob as well. How is the new inventory problem affecting front-end solutions? Does anyone want to comment to that?
I've got a few comments. I think it's a huge challenge right now. Cannot underestimate how different the game is now. So in many cases, half the cars or more being sold are actually not in inventory. So make sure that there's the ability to promote inbound cars, right? That's a huge piece of this. Build your own. Can you order the car via your digital retailing tool? There have to be ways to sell cars you don't have. And I think if you can't do that, it's going to be a real big challenge over the next. I think this is going to be a long time too. We got another 6+ months of this.
Clarice, you want to comment to that?
Yeah, I had one more thing. Really, completely agree. Having the ability to showcase virtual inventory or inventory on order is key. And also with us, we actually broke out the trading flow, and we are actually working on customizing that for dealerships, so you can actually use it for vehicle acquisition, because you have two sets of customers. Either is the ones who want to identify what their trade value is worth first before narrowing down on the piece of inventory that they're interested in. Also, just having the dealerships the ability to use the tool to acquire inventory and potentially just seamlessly driving customers into for a potential upsell or new car sale as well.
Okay. And we got more questions. Easy to sell against Carvana. You cannot kick the tires on a test drive of the vehicle versus a bolt-on DR solution that's attached to the dealership website. Bob, was that a specific question around Carvana, or?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can go ahead and ask.
Yeah, no, I just think that, having worked for I'm sorry, guys, I'm having a brain fart here. So I worked for a very short time, very successfully, until they lost some funding for out of San Francisco. And at any rate, the Carvana model.
Are you talking about BP?
What's that?
BP? Remember that one?
No.
Okay.
At any rate, I'm having a major brain fart, but it just seems like to me Carvana is great and all, but you cannot, for example, Roadster or any of the other really great DR solutions out there. I mean, you've got that bolt onto the website. It allows that consumer to go in, touch the car, test drive the car, leave the dealership, right? The pain point, right, is the amount of time spent in the dealership conducting a car deal, right? And so so Drive Motors is who I used to work for. Great early solution, but then eventually venture capital issues and management issues got in the way. But we never had any issues against Carvana simply because you can't test drive those cars. You can't touch that car. When you pick that car out, it's delivered. Yeah, you can return it. But if you're a good DR solution and you're a bolt-on, then you're going to have that experience for that consumer to go into the dealership, talk to management, kick the tires, drive the car, and then, hey, I want to leave. I want to think about this. All right. That's a scary thing for a dealership. And do you trust the ability to be able to let them go and then turn around and get on that DR solution and finish the process, right? The one thing that I'm not sure, again, if Roadster can do it, but the one thing now with Carvana is that you can do the whole deal now, right? You don't have to go through the BMV or the DMV. The whole thing can be pretty much done online. And where are we at that stage?
Did you want to comment, Clarice?
Yeah, just a couple of, I think with both Roadster and us as well, the goal is to give the customers the ability to take it as far as they want it online, right? Like, so the customer's in the driver's seat, and it's whether you do it self-serve, which is very low percent still, or whether with the guidance of the dealerships, you're just basically have the ability to meet the customer where really they want to be met. And if we look at Carvana and whatever they were, but still it's very low percent of the car sales that go through Carvana. And I think with digital retailing solutions that you do say, like you bolt on or you have that widget on your website, you really have the ability to customize it to your workflow and give the consumers the ability to be in the driving seat and be in control, meaning that you're building on trust. You have information not just about the vehicle to make well-informed decisions, but also about the dealership, like what kind of experience this dealership is offering. So it's like that differentiated experience, but still giving the consumers the ability to drive the sale. And if we think about e-commerce in any other retail industry, like the automotive industry is like 15, 20 years behind, right? So it was about time for us to try and catch up in that game. So and human interaction is not taken away. Like that's why I feel like that dealerships are scared of this model, but it's actually a key part of it. Like you have the ability that one person touch point to really drive their sale home with the consumer who's going to have a much better experience. And if you look at dealerships who embrace this and you look at their customer reviews, like our dealers are like, oh, I haven't had anything other than a 5-star review this year because of that process that they built out around it and that transparency and that trust that now they're offering. So it's actually a tool that's going to help you not just building a better customer experience, but Rudy had mentioned making a better workflow, being more efficient, have the ability to serve versus sell and actually serve more customers than you were able to in the past. So it's just like, I think we need to look at this whole thing differently.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Other than your product, which we all know are amazing, which type of digital solution has the highest ROI? And let's start with Jason.
Yeah, I can't honestly answer that question, right? I don't know what digital retail tool has the highest ROI. There's a lot of them out there. At the end of the day, right? We talked about it before. Any kind of tech that a dealer brings in, right? They have to have buy-in in order to create an experience, right? And we talked about the experience. So I think if you're going to have any kind of success with any kind of tech, it needs to be mobile first, right? From a design perspective, from an interactive perspective, from a playful perspective, right? We're looking at from the pandemic, pre-pandemic, 60% of all automotive website traffic was primarily mobile. Today, we're closer to 70%. That trend will only continue, right? We've had the desktop device. I don't know if anybody remembers that. Maybe you see them in a museum, right? Nobody has a desktop device anymore for the most part. It's all mobile, laptop, tablet, phone. And so if you're going to have any kind of ROI, right, any kind of success, we always like to talk about what does the experience look like from a consumer, right? They shop every single day, right? They do native applications and iOS and Android and all of it. What is it that you're providing to them? How easy can you allow them to interact and navigate efficiently? Because a consumer shops every single day, right? They do. Every single day they're shopping or they're browsing for content. And I think we forget, being an automotive, right, how often consumers come into an automotive site, right? They don't come in every single day. They don't come in like they do Costco or Amazon or Nordstrom's or Saks or whatever they're doing, right? They don't do that. They come in once a year, once every 6 months, once every 2 years when they're in market, right? So as a dealership, right, if I know that, if I know my consumers only coming in every so often, and we know from a funnel perspective that consumers that come into an automotive website at tier 3 are primarily low funnel, what is my goal, right? And my goal is to get their information, is to create an opportunity so I can communicate with them. That is all I care about, because I know that once that traffic hits my site, they're primarily low funnel. So, what kind of experience do I want them to have? Well, I want them to have an experience that is going to allow them to convert into an opportunity, right? Any kind of engagement that I can have, if it's chat, text, lead, DR tool, whatever it might be. And that, at the end of the day, right, that is your ROI, because everything lives together, right? If I'm integrating Moto Insight into a dealership website, if I'm integrating Roadster or any DR tool, we're always looking at it like, how can we build the most integrated experience for the consumer between these DR tools and their website, right? And I think if you can create that, then you're going to have success with any product, right?
Thanks, Jason. I don't know. Rudy.
Sorry, my Marriott Wi-Fi crapped out a little earlier. I'm back somehow. So yeah, this is a good question. I'm really always skeptical of products or companies that say, I'm going to help you sell, X% more cars. I'm going to double your. If every vendor could actually do that, dealerships would be selling like 3, 4, 5x the number of cars they're selling right now. So I really focus more on, what are solutions that are going to improve efficiency? How much more of the process can we digitize so you're not dealing with paper in the finance office? All those efficiencies are awesome. It's amazing win-win, because when the dealership's more efficient, the consumer's usually having a better experience too. Like, everyone wins. So I think, focusing on products that really drive efficiency that you can measure. Once again, coming up ahead, when you go into that meeting, know what problem you're trying to solve. And if that dealer can help you be more efficient, you can measure it and continue to iterate. Those are all big wins from an ROI perspective.
Thanks. Scott?
So I've been at this for a while. I've done okay personally in the industry, right, over the years, but I had a really rough start. So in the mid-90s, I started at a Ford dealership out in Southern California. Ladies and gentlemen, I was among the, as bad as a salesperson can get. I wasn't very good, at least for the first 2-3 months. And I'm okay saying that. I was atrocious. I sold one car. It was 2 half deals my very first month in the summer of 1996. Here's why I was a horrible salesperson. All I did was focus on price. I thought it was all about price. Of course it's about price. If you don't have the money, then how could you afford the car? Here's an F-150. It's a $50,000 truck. I'm going to get this thing down to $44,000. I'd lose the customer every single time. So it finally dawned on me. Somebody must have hit me over the head a few times. Americans are payment shoppers. In Europe, they don't even have credit cards, or they do, but they rely on debit cards. Here in America, maybe I didn't travel enough as a kid. So to answer your question directly, the products that promote payments, not only payments, but real payments. Your platinum sponsor had a plug in the beginning of the broadcast, get pre-approved at the comfort of your own home. That's great. A lot of times that takes a date of birth or a social. So to answer your question directly, products that have really fascinated me for years now are products that allow consumers to do more at home and be more empowered. Now, to Jason's point, at the end of the day, you got to leave a footprint. Otherwise, all this stuff can happen and there's somebody to follow up with. So what I like, to answer the question directly, what I really like, get pre-qualified in the comfort of your own home, no date of birth, no social, and have a look at real payments. This is working really, really well in the real estate market. If you log on to Zillow, there's all kind of tools. Sometimes we've got to look out of our industry to look back within. And you could look at houses right now with no social, no date of birth, and see what you qualify for. And then, so you're not wasting the realtor's time looking at an $800,000 house. All that you're qualified for is $550,000. So taking that exact same concept, applying it online, allowing tech to do the heavy work on your website during hours, after hours, and then by the time the consumer comes to you, to Jeff's point or Jason's point, they've already left a footprint. Not only have they already left a footprint, but you know what vehicles they pre-qualified for, and they're a lot lower funnel.
That's great. Great thoughts. Really appreciate that. Troy?
It's I think one of the things that when you talk about process or trying to control the whole thing, I think it sort of flies out the window when you have customers that are willing to drive far away to get a car, and there's less and less loyalty to the dealership. I don't know how old the study is, but I think it's customers are willing to drive up to 75 miles on average to buy a car, but less than 20 to get it serviced. So it's kind of a pipe dream to think that every customer who's going to go buy a car is going to be enamored with your process and be willing to drive 75 miles all the time. Sorry, guys. The other one is right now we have an inventory shortage, a massive inventory shortage. I've got a friend right now who wanted to buy an Escalade, and he's actually buying it. I live in Vancouver. He's buying it in St. Albert, Alberta, which is 1,300 kilometers away. If he didn't have a digital retailing tool, he wouldn't be able to finish that purchase. I think any customer who wants to buy a car is going to cast a much wider net than they're used to because they're willing to travel. And I think any retailer who's willing to sell whatever car they can is going to try to cast a net to get the biggest market they can get. And so for me, the biggest ROI that's going to deliver to a dealer is, how do I just get more people from BDP to sold? And if that means casting a wider net, so be it.
Troy, we got a question. What's the conversion between kilometers and miles?
1.6, I think. So I was trying to do it in my head. I thought it was about, 75 miles, call it 100 clicks. And if we're doing the 1,300 kilometer trip, which I used to do to Edmonton to my folks all the time, it's about 750 miles or 800 miles, I guess, more or less.
Thanks for the conversion. Clarice?
Yeah, I just had one more comment on that one. It's to get the highest ROI, you need to really look at the overall consumer journey. So you could be reducing your cost per click, but if you're driving them to a bad experience, then you're not going to be converting them. So really looking at your overall consumer journey. Do we have a nice, clear path laid out to our customers based on their intent, so we can capture them early in their research phase, drive them into the transactional flow or wherever you need to on your website, whatever widgets you have, and are we providing the intuitive flow for them? Because if we're only looking at it siloed, all our solutions, then you're not going to get the ROI. We have to look at the full end-to-end consumer journey, I think.
Cool. Thanks for that. Jeff?
Well, there is actually a question that we missed quite a few minutes ago from Guy Olivier. How do you maintain the bandwidth the dealer is allocated to you, the vendor partner? And actually, I'll go back to Scott on that.
Sorry, so the question is, how do you maintain the bandwidth that what, Jeff?
The bandwidth that they've allocated to you. How do you make sure that they've got the bandwidth? I take that.
Well, you got to look at the size of the company, first of all, right? You've got to, that's part of the due diligence when you're signing on. And you got to mystery shop yourself, right? You've got to keep vendors on their toes. A lot of vendors are just, and partners are just reactive. So I would say, not to sound cliche, but inspecting what you expect. And it's not a once and done. It's, you should keep your vendors and your partners on your toes, any business, monthly, weekly. So keep them on their toes, inspect what you expect at the end of the day.
Terrific, thank you. Another question, which just a show of hands, is how many people on this call are doing it on the desktop versus a mobile or a laptop?
Wow. Hands. There's two. Cool.
It's very interesting. Moving along. Thanks for the questions, everybody.
Yes, we can get to that.
Question for me is, I have a picture of our friend Mr. Musk having everything being fully integrated into his cars any day now. When do you think retailing technology is going to interface right to the vehicle the customers are driving? And that I'm actually going to put out to Claris. Claris?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute here, just removed it. So I think if like some of the technology really looks at today, it's like we are trying to understand like what customer needs we're trying to solve. So I think it's gonna take a while. Like we know that service needs are already available through the platform. So I'm not sure if I have the right answer for that one. I think it will get there eventually. I don't have the answer to when that would be.
Sure. Well, I have a picture in my. Sorry, Jason, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're already seeing it, right? I mean, we're seeing everything kind of get down toward that end result, and it starts with the DMS, right? And I think you're seeing things like Techion coming in. You're seeing the acquisition of Roadster, right, with CDK and what they might want to do with a version 2 of a DMS, and is it Gugaboo? I always get it confused and mixed up with Reynolds, right? So I think you're seeing this, smart DMS that is going to do a lot, right, than what it can do today, which has character limitations, right? I mean, if you can talk about a holistic environment to run a dealership with that has DR built into it, has all of the service stuff built into it, can provide a holistic environment that when a consumer comes in for service, they're immediately presented with an offer, either it's through a text message or right there, whatever it might be, right? And, you're going to have this touch point, right? This ability from a DMS perspective to communicate with your customer at a very detailed level, right? At a personalized level. And I think that's where it comes down to is personalization, right? How personal can we really make the experiences that we're trying to get people to have, right? And the internet is going there too. I mean, we look at internet trends, we look at where things are going, right? It's why we built our platform isn't built on WordPress, right? Our platform is built on Angular and single page application. I mean, we're using multi-million-dollar technology that Facebook and Airbnb and Netflix and Hulu and all the big guys use. We're using it for our platform. Why? Because we know that 5 years from now, Angular and all the things that we're doing is going to be the future of the internet. And it's going to give us the elasticity on being able to control the environment that we want to create for the consumer on behalf of our dealers. Everything moves. I mean, we all remember 2004, we all had a Nokia device, right? And we look at from the 2004 to 2020, right, where mobile penetration was like 10% to now mobile penetration probably being over 100%, right? From desktops being the device that had the highest, website interaction to being the lowest. We're already seeing the trend in how quickly technology is moving. We forget that Google's only 20 years old, right? We forget all of these things that we don't kind of put into place that is important because it all comes down to the experience. And I do believe that DMSs will be a big push of that experience that you're talking about, Jeff.
Great, thank you. Well, I have a picture in my mind that with Tesla and other brands coming out that are going retail direct, somebody's going to get into their car 6 months before the end of warranty, and up's going to pop a thing on their screen that says, well, your warranty's up. Would you like a new car? Please click here to say yes and configure your new car.
There's a lot of tension there, though, right? I think the bigger question here is like, who owns the data in the car? Is it, is the dealer? And I think, Jason made a bunch of good points about the DMS, but the OEM versus the dealer here, as far as that data goes, and who's communicating with the shopper. Are you getting conflicting or different messages from different parties? Who's going to try to access the customer first when the opportunity comes up? All that stuff is going to be fascinating.
Do I actually take that as a comment from you that it's going to come a time that you go to get into your car and start your car up, and you're going to have to download download a new license or something like that in order to drive it?
100%. I mean, right now, when the OEMs decided to put 4G LTE into all the cars and say that it's so that all the customers can have Wi-Fi hotspots and do them a favor, it was really so that they could upload and download data. They could, you can flash software into your vehicle while sitting on the driveway. We've all seen the video of all the Teslas with the flashing lights in the field they're all getting updated at the same time. I think right now, fixed ops is already integrated. If you have a Nissan or a Ford and you hit, I need to get a service, it's going to integrate to your local dealer. That already exists. As far as the retail one is concerned, I think exactly what Rudy said was that data of my driving patterns, my mileage, all of that stuff, my average speed, all of those things is all getting uploaded to the OEMs, and that's going to be used to market. And I think with CarPlay going into the vehicle and just what you said, Jeff, I think we are intensely naive to think that there's not going to be ads that are going to be dropping into our infotainment center at some point in the next 3 to 5 years, because that's a revenue stream for somebody. But those ads are going to come in and it's going to be personalized, targeted, hyper-targeted, data-driven, and guaranteed your local dealer is going to jump all over that and start saying, hey, while your car is starting, by the way, like you said, your extended warranty's up, or we've got 0.5% financing on the 2022 version of the 2017 you're driving. That's coming for sure.
Yeah, you're going to need Mach-E, 14 in order to start your car.
And I think, Jeff, we need to get Scott's comment.
Oh, how much more there's to add? Troy hit the nail on the head. The plumbing's already in place, right? Cadillac's been had the technology with OnStar for many, many years. It's inevitable. So I agree with everything Troy and Rudy and Clarice had mentioned. The plumbing's in place. We're already getting notifications on service. I don't think it's far-fetched at all. I really do agree with Rudy. It comes down to data. Who owns the data? Especially now as Google and Facebook are pulling back on the use of utilizing data. I would say probably just the federal and the state laws, the one thing that's probably slowing it down, right? That's the only hurdle in its way. Otherwise, the tech and the plumbing's already in place.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Any final comments? We're out of time.
Yep.
Great show. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, anybody just got a final comment before we say ta-ta? Nope, great. Thanks everybody for joining us. We know you're busy and we appreciate you sharing your knowledge. It was a lively show and some great comments and some super duper input. And thank you very much. Next time I see some digital input of anything, I'm going to think of you all. So thank you again and have a super day and stay safe.